of Charlotte.
Yes.
I'm actually up to date on that. One of the few shows that
guys
I'm somehow up to date.
Oh, I'm like on the 4th episode.
I'm
I think.
so behind.
Don't know how I kept up with it because it's not my favorite show of the season. It's just one that I'm watching, and I was like, "Oh, I'm up to date. Oh, all right." But yeah, a lot of people were freaking out the most recent episode.
Yeah, it got pretty dark. Without spoiler, it got really dark towards the end, and
Yeah, like
I wanted to know what was up with. God, I wrote down his name, but Kumagami. Why was he standing over? You see his shadow at the end, and it was like, that's an interesting clip.
Yeah, so if you didn't watch the end of the most recent episode of Charlotte, there is a thing after the opening. So we talked about last time, watch the openings, or at least check out the time codes and make sure you're not ending early. But yeah, so there was an ominous thing at the end for sure.
Yeah.
And this, I think they did this shift pretty well. So far the show's been pretty casual and just saying, oh, this is the superpower of the week sort of deal. And you kind of learn a little bit more about the characters and it's fine. But I think you're getting to the halfway point. You have to have your end goal kind of set. That means the shows are going to start ending. You're getting to their climax. You got to pick it up. And we actually saw that with a lot of different shows this week too.
Yeah, it felt like episodes 5 and 6 of a lot of shows definitely they're taking a turn. So the tone is starting to shift and things are starting to have consequences for characters. Because I felt like last episode 5 of Charlotte, kind of felt a little pointless. I didn't quite. The one kid had the superpower of flying, which was cool, but there didn't seem to be any hook that I could tell. I was like, well, one day you might be flying and then you'll grow out of adolescence and fall. But I was like, yeah, but what's the weakness? I didn't quite understand what the weakness was.
Die from that?
I mean, I don't know, not from that, but I'm just saying while he has
right now, though.
No, I'm saying while he still has it, he can only fly for 10 seconds or, something like that. I didn't quite get the catch, and it was the obligatory, we go camping episode and we get into swimsuits episode. It felt like it didn't have a point, whereas this episode felt like things were starting to move along.
Yeah, it kind of seems more fillery. They meet new people with these powers, these other kids, and they're just like, hey, don't do that. All right, bye.
It was really weird.
Okay. But yeah, so maybe we'll see. I don't know if they'll go back to that. It feels like they can't almost at this point of just going back to, oh, we need to find these kids again. I mean,
no. I can already kind of predict the story arc.
Yeah.
Granted, what happened is okay, they've been setting this up for a while. They've been saying what happens if you're caught with these powers, and so I think that's kind of the direction it'll probably go in. But having said that, I still love the music and animation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really pretty.
Yeah. Like it a lot. So we'll see where Charlotte goes.
So have you guys been keeping up with Gangsta?
Yes.
Because that one
goodness.
had
have time to watch it.
Speaking of episodes 6 and it picking up, this week was so good. I thought last week was good, but this week just keeps. It just brought even more detail.
This is the payoff. Episode 6 was the payoff for Gangsta. It's been great. We got some really good character development. That's fine, but it always seems to be hinting towards something. You're like, all right, get to it. Nope, not this week, but. For the most part, whenever it does hint towards something, it says, oh, hey, the next episode, or a few minutes later, it says, this is the answer.
Yeah.
They don't usually leave you lingering, but of course, the overarching plot thing that I actually had a problem with earlier is hey, it seems like they're trying to get something done, but they're not actually doing anything, and it makes it feel a little empty. They're finally surprise, here it is. And so...
Yeah, it feels like all the puzzle pieces are finally falling into place. And so now we get the whole thing with Alex's behavior. Now we get the whole relationship between Warwick and Nicholas a lot better. And it's starting to fall into place. Because I don't know, is Gangsta going to only be 12 episodes or 22 episodes?
Yeah, I think it's 12.
12, that's what it's written down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so again, that shift in tone and the consequences for the characters, for their actions is all sort of falling into place. So I'm really interested to see where that goes.
I'm so excited to watch it now.
Yeah, I mean, I will say my only complaint is that I think it took too long for us to figure out, or to be told, essentially. Because it wasn't even we figured it out. We were just flat out told. Sorry to spoil it a little bit. But we were just told what was going on with Alex, and I feel like there was no reason for them to withhold that for so long.
I think it makes sense, a little bit, just so that they could give her arc, a little bit more length. And so maybe it shows, that these guys were caring for her a little bit more, and that they were trying to monitor and make sure she's okay. I mean, you'll find out. I don't want to be too spoilery with what it is.
I'm not worried about it.
Well, yeah, so you find out that it is drug-related.
It is drug-related.
Yeah.
I was so banking on PTSD.
No, yeah, but it kind of is, though.
Oh, okay.
It's actually her coming off.
Combo, okay.
Yeah, it's her coming off drugs. So, of drugs that, Barry used to give her to keep her in line. They're like, oh, these are the drugs that, they give
prostitutes to keep them submissive.
Right,
yeah.
okay.
So.
That's really real, okay.
Yeah, and so even though things start to pick up with her, I'm a little worried. Like, what are they really doing with her? I think we see a reason why she's being kept around in this episode. Like, there's a flashback that says, "Oh, okay, well maybe that's why they have her around." I mean, aside from them just being like kind and helping her out, it doesn't really make sense why they'd want her there.
They did
don't owe
mention a
anything to
little
her.
bit that the doctor was saying that people who are stuck on these drugs tend to get very clingy to a certain environment or certain people, to something about
Sure.
grounding them in reality. But I agree with you that there doesn't seem to be a lot of reason
Like,
for
why
her to
is she there?
stick around. So I feel like the payoff will definitely come in the next couple episodes because it has to tie in by the end.
Yeah.
Well, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
There's just a really, I don't want to spoil too much, though. That's the problem. There was like a really interesting moment between her and Warwick, like after we learn kind of the details. And it was actually a really great scene. It got really, what I like about the series is that it's not afraid to get real, so to speak, right? Like,
Yeah,
they
it
don't
takes on-
shy away from mature content without exploiting it, which I really like. But it kind of set up this whole like almost like, I almost wonder what this says about how the two main leads form attachments to people in like her interaction with work. Like, I don't want to go too much in depth. Like, I want you to experience that first.
Yeah, I think it handles trauma and really difficult situations and, adult material really well. Like, it handles prostitution super well and is very careful with how it presents it and not...
It's not
to-
super exploitive. Or
Yeah,
gross.
it's not
Yeah.
like, oh, well, there's this prostitute on the side, whatever, It's like, no, this is an issue with the city, and it kind of reminds you that even though there are some of the, family bosses and stuff that are likable, that they contributed to this environment. Like, that you can't just undoubtedly like, oh, well, that's the good guy because he helps these people X, Y, and Z. It's like, hey, remember that he's part of the system and he's one of the major players in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of just...
I like that. It makes more sense now why they're involved with these gangs. Like, it comes together better.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I wasn't sure. Like, you're handymen, great. Why don't you get out of this or do something else? But it's like they're so involved
Yeah.
that they kind of can't.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear it's finally picking up because I was talking to someone who had read the manga, and he was saying that the pacing of the show is very slow, and it kind of follows the manga too closely because manga pacing is often different than anime, obviously.
Right.
And so I'm glad that it's finally like hitting its stride because it did seem like it was kind of lagging for a while. Like, I don't think Alex's arc. I mean, obviously I haven't seen this episode yet, but I don't think her arc needed to be dragged so much. Although I do appreciate like a nuanced depiction of sex work because you don't see that in most media, especially not especially, but any media. So I like seeing that. I like having a show that does that for us.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so be sure, audience, friends, countrymen, and my viewers,
Comrades.
comrades, let us know what you guys think about this episode in particular. I know it was like a big turning point, especially, let's get spoilery, but I won't do it here because Callie. And also, I'm sure some people haven't caught up on it. But if you did drop it or were thinking about picking back up or something, it
Definitely do it.
Yeah.
it's a great payoff. Like, very emotional. I almost cried.
Sorry.
It like Gangsta just does this thing where it knows how to use flashbacks in the best way, and it doesn't feel intrusive. It doesn't have to like, no one's just sitting there and be like, oh, let me think about this thing or anything. It's just done really well.
Yeah, it ties in really well, and it gives you realistic reasons to go back and have these flashbacks. So the cuts make sense, which I appreciate. It's not just super random. They're trying to fit it all into one episode. It's paced really well and done really well. So yay, Gangsta.
I'm just scared with this series that it's going to be one of those where they get to the finale and I'm going to be dying because there's not any more.
Oh, yeah.
So we have the manga at least.
I know.
Yeah.
That is the consolation prize, but I am actually worried because the fact that it's getting so good and it's like halfway through, I wonder just how much they're going to be able to cram in between now and the last episode.
yeah.
I feel that way with School-Live because I think that's only 12 episodes too. And
It
we're
is.
already on episode 5, I think.
Well, I think the pacing on School-Live has been pretty good so far. That's
Yeah.
another show that's really good at using flashbacks.
Yeah,
By
Yeah.
the way,
it's really still my
That-
favorite.
again,
of
we
the
don't want to
season.
spoil it for Elena.
No, we don't. but
I'm
it's
sorry,
driving
I was
crazy
busy
'cause I
this
really wanna
weekend.
talk
I
about it.
really want to do a spoiler cast at some point because there's a lot to.
I think
it's
they
like
said that they were
we should.
interested, so maybe at the end of the series, we might do like a full series review for the few that we did get
Yeah.
to keep up with entirely.
Yeah, because I reviewed the first episode and then
yeah, we didn't
just-
get to
We had to
continue
decide
it.
which ones to keep doing, but
Yeah.
like a full series review, I'd probably be interested in doing.
Yeah,
that
but I
'cause-
think that'd be a fun spoiler cast to do because there's so much to
Yeah.
dissect in it. There's so many great flashbacks, and there's so much great foreshadowing at the same time. It's really well balanced.
Yeah.
I like the way they're weaving the story on that one. I like the way they're using flashbacks. They start kind of in the present, and then they show you how everybody got there. They show you kind of, and even not just flashbacks, but also it's another kind of PTSD thing with Yuki. You get to see her specifically, like her flashbacks, and that gives you insight and answers questions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I feel
finally.
like that's the whole narrative arc is really Yuki and her coping mechanisms and just mental illness altogether. It's really not about zombies. It's not at all about zombies. It's about how you deal with trauma and how she's dealing with trauma and how her friends
Have to help her
have
with
to
that.
help her and they don't know how, so all they can do is enable it, even though
Yeah.
it puts them in terrible danger.
Yes.
Well, they're dealing with their own trauma as well, from what I've seen.
Yeah,
They're
absolutely.
all
They
all
definitely are.
dealing with trauma, and Yuki's the one who kind of exhibits the most severe symptoms. And again, mental illness is another thing that I like seeing nuanced depictions of, and it's something it's something that's very important to me personally. And so I really like seeing kind of. You see her like moments of clarity sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially in
and
this past episode.
It's very, very impactful.
Yeah.
Because losing your sense of reality is a really tragic thing to me, and that's the saddest part of the show to me is how disconnected she is. So I like seeing that a lot. And I do like I love zombie stuff. I'm a huge zombie fan, and I like it when zombie stuff doesn't focus on the zombies. I like it when it focuses on the people and how they deal with it. And
I think that's what makes Walking Dead so popular. Is it's really about the character stories. It's
Yeah.
really character motivated as opposed to let's go out and shoot some zombies.
Yeah, I mean, you can
It's-
only do so much with that. It's
Yeah.
like zombies. All right,
You
well,
can-
they're going to attack you, try to kill you.
You can only gore it up so much before it just becomes trite, and then you need something else. You need more substance. So I think School-Live does that super well.
Yeah, it does. There's a lot of mature, I feel like anime this past 1 or 2 seasons where it's not super silly. Like there's the swath of like super silly, over the top kind of stuff. I wanted to talk a little about Fairy Tail, which is on its like 7th season now, and it's so opposite where it's so slapstick. It's like Gintama that way, where it's like really slapstick and really goofy and funny, and people are always talking about the show. So I watched the first 2 episodes. And it's funny, but it's such a 180 from the thing I was watching before, which I think was Gangsta. Like I watched one after the other. Because I these polar opposites, like one side of the universe and the other side of the universe. But it's just interesting how anime gives us the opportunity to explore those kind of themes, like post-traumatic stress disorder and sex workers and stuff like that. And it proves that anime does not have to be exploitive about things. I think it gets a bad rap for being a little too exploitive about certain
And
things.
the fan service, like that's like one thing
fan
people
service,
know
yeah.
if you don't really know much about anime.
That's the one thing people think of is
Or believe
it. Or believe it. But the capital A anime kind of stuff that we talked about. Like I think that's people who aren't as familiar with the industry or just haven't seen a lot of anime probably think about kind of a caricature of what it is. And I like that we get these shows that give us something more.
Yeah,
I really like
Cowboy
it.
Bebop or Michiko and Hachin or Gangsta. They're just like super mature, good stuff that balances sort of the fun, silly stuff. So, yay anime!
Yay, anime! I started Toradora.
Oh, how was that?
Yeah, so the reason I started it was because I was on Tumblr and I saw like a photo set of some anime. At the time I didn't know what it was, and like it was this scene and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to know what anime this is from. I have to watch this. So I asked somebody if they were like, oh, it's from Toradora, one of my favorites. And so that's what convinced me to watch it. But I was told that I saw a huge spoiler and I was like, well, now I need to know how they got there because
Right.
I loved this scene that I saw.
Yeah.
And so basically it's about it sounds kind of like a basic setup. It's about a guy who looks kind of scary, but he's not actually scary, and a girl who's very angry and tiny, and they call her the Palm Top Tiger because she's super angry and like loud, but she's like a tiny person, and they have crushes on each other's best friends.
Oh my gosh.
And so they like end up having to help each other kind of thing. It's like a very basic setup. But I've been told by people that it kind of gets really into the characters' personalities and kind of goes a little deeper than it might seem. So I'm excited to continue that one.
So
but
is it a
seems,
comedy?
It's like a romantic comedy.
Romantic comedy.
Yeah, it's super cute so far. I've only seen the first episode, but that scene, I was like, oh, I gotta get here. I don't even care that I know what happens. Like, I have to know how they got there, because I just loved that scene that I saw.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
Speaking of Tora, Ushio and Tora was good this week as well. It's another one of those episodes, I think it's on episode 6 now, that also took a shift in tone towards the end where there's this big reveal about one of the characters' mother, and you're like, oh, that's interesting. So it's at the very end, it's like past the credits. So you have to, once again,
They're so good.
the ending credits,
Yeah.
get through them
Yeah.
because now they've figured out how to have like a carrot at the end of the stick to get you to
Yeah.
watch the ending credits.
Yeah, it's like
Because it was like this big reveal, and I was like, what? Now I have to see the next episode to see how this plays out. So
Check your timestamps, kids.